Usually, I really enjoy the moment that new gear arrives, but this time, not so much. So about a month ago, we received a new package, the Inter-Tech W-III RGB case. And everything fine so far, and we unpacked it and hooked it up to make some pictures for our Instagram, which you should be following. Usually for cases we have a spare bridged power supply behind the set which just delivers power to the RGB components, so that everything looks nice and shiny. Now when the W-III went on the table, everything was fine. The LEDs were on and we could make the 1K Euro PC pictures. So far so good, but the day after that we went back and had to make an individual picture. But this time, nothing. The fans were spinning but no LEDs. So after some trial and error, we thought that the fan controller must have some issue. So we took the fan controller from the RS04 RGB set, which luckily is exactly the same model. And who would have thought it worked again? So at this point, we thought that it had to be a bricked fan controller. Nothing exceptional, not pleasing at all, but DOAs can happen. But the day afterwards, we started to work on the review of this thing. And who would have thought again, it was dead. At that moment, we weren't so sure anymore if the fan controller was broken to begin with. And after realizing that the RS04 set doesn't light up anymore either, we had to realize that actually at least one of the fans inside of the W-III case seems to kill our fan hubs. So at that moment we were left with at least 3 killer fans, 3 fans where we didn't know if the LEDs are still working, and 2 dead fan controllers, and no other one left to make any other test. So for the first time in my life I had to do the unthinkable and I filled a ticket on Inter-Tech's website. To my pleasant surprise, they answered extremely quick. I wrote them a whole paragraph explaining the issue and what I did and what happened, and they were very cooperative and immediately sent me 3 new fans and 2 new fan controllers. And I must add that the package arrived 2 days later, which to be fair had to be sent over express because it had to cross at least one country border to get here. So from a customer service side, perfect. Immediate response with spare parts without any waiting from my side. But to be honest, this should not have happened to begin with. And it's not only the killer fan. Like with every previous Inter-Tech case, the build quality is something that should be really worked on. In the front case there were already some deep scratches, and one of these plastic holder things which attach the front panel to the rest was already broken off. So before we even get into what I think about this case, the build quality should most definitely be improved. But let's put the issues aside and pretend that the case came in a perfect condition. So, features. On the positive we have a separate power supply tunnel with dust filter, space for 2 3.5-inch hard drives behind it, 2 2.5-inch hard drive spaces behind the mainboard, and that is especially pleasing because I hate it when you can see them. Nice sturdy feet with rubber ceilings, up to IDX motherboard size, 3 included front fans with controllable RGB, which can be hooked up using an included fan hub, which also lets you control all the RGB with your addressable RGB header. Space for probably a 360 red in the front and a 280 red on top with a dust filter. And with this, of course, space for 2 120 or 2 240 fans on top. In the back we have another 120 fan, and the whole motherboard area is lowered so you can fit up some giant radiators on top. And because we still have not enough fans, we have 2 extra spots for 120 fans on top of the power supply, which I still doubt it would bring you any benefit. And as last we have a removable piece next to the mainboard which allows you to cable manage everything quite easily, as well as a whole bunch of cable holes all around the case. So cable management should not be an issue here. Now from the positive features, that should be it. Now coming to the things that could have been better. The front I/O features the usual suspects and only one USB 3.0 and 2 USB 2.0, so this could really get an upgrade. The case is advertised as being built for 3 2.5-inch drives, and the third one should go in here. But until now I have not found any way to mount any SSD to this because the screw holes are not for a 2.5-inch and there is no additional bracket. But don't count this necessarily as a negative, because there is a strong possibility that I am just too dumb to figure this one out. Even though it is very nice that the front panel has an additional button which can be hooked up to control the LEDs, the button quality is terrible. If you don't press the button completely straight, but in a downward movement, like you would do from sitting on a chair, the button can get stuck, which happens quite often with this product. This will probably just shut down the machine after starting it, but it is annoying, so this should definitely be changed. The addition of built-in fans with a controller is quite nice, but the controller can only be hooked up to the mainboard RGB header at mode X for power, which means that the fans will always just keep spinning at 1200 RPM. Now, something that is not negative in any way, but I just don't understand it. There is a hole in the back of the case which doesn't make any sense to me. It seems to be designed to hold some sort of cable, but I'm not sure. Maybe someone can comment what it is for. Now with the positive and negatives are done, let's talk about the design. I must say that I very much enjoy the look of the front panel. With the vertical alignment going from top to bottom, with the 3 fans next to it, it gives a tacky look but still kind of classic. The front panel is perfectly fine, but with a €60 price tag, I would have expected the side panel to be out of glass too, instead of this cheap plastic. Now design-wise, the 3 fans in the front are theoretically alright, but if you look closely, the fans are almost completely pressed against the glass. Now this means that because they are oriented to be sucking air from the front and pushing it into the case, they basically can't. The only way that air could get into the front of the case is through this radded side piece here. And as you may see, there are just tiny vents on each row which theoretically lets air to go in. But the air that does get in just hits this side of the fan, and then maybe a tiny bit of air will get sucked around the fan and then into it. But because the fan is so damn close to the glass, this is just a tiny proportion. And this can even be tested. If we hook up the fans and they are now spinning at 1200 RPM, they are not sucking in any air at all. No, what actually happens, they are sucking it from above and then pushing it out in the front. And this leaves the fans to be almost completely pointless from a performance side of view. But this allows me to perfectly transition into the next part. What could be better? So as I see it, the main problem with the fans is that they are really directly behind the glass. So possibility number 1 would be to push back the fans so that they align with the beginning of the vents on the side. This way the air coming from the side would actually get sucked into the fans. An issue with this would be that the glass is glued to the same piece of plastic that holds the fans. So these two would need to get separated, and then you would need to add either a frame around the glass, which then just holds it, or screws with spacers, kind of like the C303 mirror. Of course, this would kind of change the look, but I think it would still fit into the design and allow for perfect airflow. Now additionally, at that point, the bottom of the case could also be opened up, which would then let even more air come in. But despite that issue and the possible improvements with the front buttons and front I/O, the case is not that bad. The only real issue with the case is actually, like with every other Inter-Tech case, consistency. There are just too many little errors here and there, scratches or bad paint jobs or killer components and whatnot. But ignoring that, it's okay. The material used are fine, feature set is also alright, and it looks quite nice. The price is a bit higher compared to the other cases that we had a look at so far, but for €59, the case isn't that expensive if you consider 3 RGB fans are included as well as a fan controller. So all in all, I cannot say that this case is bad because mine came broken, but I can only start recommending it once they figure out the front airflow, because this is just useless. But before we get to the end of the video, there should be some time left for some nice B-rolls. So, to wrap this video up, we hope that you liked the video and that you've been informed enough to make a conscious buying decision. The manufacturing links as well as affiliate links, if we can find any for the Inter-Tech W-III, are in the description below. So if you want, you can always check them out. Anyway, we hope to see you back in the next video, but until then, you can give us some feedback with a thumb up, thumb down, or maybe even a comment. And if you want to keep watching, have a look at one of these not totally random videos.